There is a sting in the Arizona desert so violent that grown men have been known to fall to the ground screaming, unable to do anything but scream and wait for the pain to pass. Entomologists who have felt it describe it as being hit by a jolt of electricity that shuts off every other thought in the brain, a pain so total and so immediate that the only rational response is to lie down and howl until it subsides. This is not the sting of a scorpion, not the bite of a rattlesnake, and not even the venom of the black widow that shares this same sun-baked terrain. This is the weapon of an iridescent, orange-winged wasp the length of a human thumb, an insect that hunts the largest spiders on the continent, drags them into the dirt, and turns their still living bodies into a nursery for its young. By the time this video ends, you will understand exactly why the tarantula hawk is considered one of the most feared insects on Earth, why the giant spider it hunts is almost powerless to stop it, and why this desert showdown is one of the strangest and most brutal predator-prey relationships in all of nature. Stay with us until the very end, because the final stage of this hunt, the moment when the tarantula's fate is truly sealed, is something most people never see coming. Before we go further, if you find encounters like this fascinating, make sure to subscribe to Wild Frontlines and turn on notifications. The story of this rivalry begins in the arid grasslands and scrublands of the American Southwest, in states like Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, where summer temperatures regularly climb past 40 degrees Celsius, and the ground itself seems to radiate heat like an oven. It is here, in this punishing landscape of mesquite, creosote bush, and sun-cracked soil, that two of the continent's most formidable arthropods share the same square miles of territory, each one perfectly adapted to survive conditions that would kill most other creatures within hours. The tarantula hawk, belonging to the genus Pepsis, is not a single species, but a group of large spider wasps found throughout the warmer regions of the Americas, with several species calling the American Southwest home. These wasps are almost impossible to miss once you know what to look for. Their bodies are a deep, metallic blue-black that seems to absorb the desert light rather than reflect it, while their wings burn a brilliant burnt orange, almost the color of fire, which serves as a warning to every other animal in the vicinity that this is not an insect to be trifled with. Adult tarantula hawks can grow to over 5 centimeters in length, making them among the largest wasps found anywhere in North America, and their long, spindly legs end in curved claws built specifically for gripping and manipulating prey, many times their own body weight. On the other side of this equation is the tarantula itself, a spider that has become almost synonymous with fear in popular culture, despite being, in most respects, a remarkably docile and harmless creature to humans. Species like the desert blonde tarantula and the Arizona blonde tarantula, both belonging to the genus Aphonopelma, are the most common targets for these wasps across the Southwest. These spiders can live for decades, with females in some species surviving 25 to 30 years in the wild, an extraordinary lifespan for any arthropod, and one that stands in stark contrast to the brief, frantic life of the wasp that hunts them. Tarantulas are ambush predators themselves, relying on stealth, patience, and raw power in their fangs to subdue crickets, beetles, and even small lizards or rodents that wander too close to their burrow. Their bodies are covered in specialized urticating hairs, thousands of tiny barbed bristles that can be kicked off the abdomen in a defensive cloud when the spider feels threatened, hairs that embed themselves in the skin or eyes of an attacker and cause intense irritation. For most predators, this defense is more than enough to end a confrontation before it begins. But the tarantula hawk is not most predators. What makes this rivalry so one-sided and so fascinating to scientists who have studied it for decades is the specific and almost surgical nature of the wasp's hunting strategy. Unlike most predators, the female tarantula hawk is not hunting for herself. She is already fed on nectar and plant fluids to fuel her own body, and in fact the diet of a fully mature tarantula hawk is almost entirely herbivorous, made up of flower nectar and the sugary juice of fermented fruit. The hunt she is about to undertake has nothing to do with her own hunger and everything to do with the continuation of her species, because she is searching not for food, but for a living incubator, a host body large enough and durable enough to keep one single egg alive and fed for weeks to come. This distinction matters enormously because it explains why the wasp does not simply kill the tarantula outright. A dead spider would begin to decompose within days, and decomposing flesh would be useless, even fatal, to a developing wasp larva. What the tarantula hawk needs is something far more precise: a living body, paralyzed but not killed, its internal organs intact and its tissues fresh, ready to sustain a growing offspring for weeks on end. The hunt itself begins with detection, and here the wasp relies on one of the most sensitive chemical detection systems in the insect world. Female tarantula hawks use their long, curved antennae to pick up the faint pheromone trails and burrow scent left behind by tarantulas, essentially reading the chemical signature of a spider's home from meters away. Some researchers believe the wasps are also capable of detecting the vibrations a tarantula makes as it moves inside its burrow, using this seismic information to pinpoint exactly where the spider is hiding beneath the surface. Once a burrow has been located, the wasp lands near the entrance and begins a slow, deliberate approach, tapping the ground and probing the silk-lined opening with her antennae in a behavior that some entomologists compare to a hunter checking a trap. This is the moment of greatest risk for the wasp, because provoking the tarantula too aggressively, too early, could trigger a defensive strike from fangs capable of puncturing an insect's exoskeleton with ease. But the tarantula hawk has evolved to manage this risk with remarkable precision, closing the distance before the tarantula can retreat back into the safety of its burrow. When the tarantula finally emerges, whether lured out by the disturbance or caught outside its burrow while foraging, a violent and often prolonged struggle begins. The two creatures grapple in the dirt, the tarantula rearing back and lashing out with its front legs and fangs, the wasp darting and weaving to avoid a killing bite while searching for the single vulnerable point in the spider's armor. Unlike its own thick exoskeleton, the joint between a tarantula's legs and its body, the soft membrane at what could be called the underside near the leg coxa, is exposed and unprotected. This is the target the wasp has been built for. In a movement that has been captured on high-speed camera by researchers, the tarantula hawk curls its abdomen forward and drives its stinger, which can measure up to 7 millimeters in length, directly into this soft junction. The moment of contact triggers an immediate and dramatic transformation in the tarantula's body. Within seconds, the massive spider that just moments earlier was rearing up in full defensive posture goes completely limp, its legs curling inward, its powerful fangs falling still. The venom injected by the wasp does not kill. It paralyzes, shutting down the spider's neuromuscular system with a precision that leaves its internal organs, its heart, and its digestive system fully functional, while removing every ounce of its ability to move or fight back. It is worth pausing here to talk about the sting itself, because this single act of paralysis is responsible for the tarantula hawk's fearsome reputation among humans as well. Entomologist Justin Schmidt, who spent much of his career allowing himself to be stung by dozens of different insect species in order to create a comparative pain index, ranked the tarantula hawk's sting among the most excruciating in the entire insect world, describing the sensation in terms that have since become famous within entomological circles for their sheer intensity. Unlike the sting of a bee or a typical wasp, which usually fades within minutes, the pain from a tarantula hawk sting is often described as instantaneous, blinding, and almost entirely incapacitating, though it typically subsides after only a few minutes, leaving no lasting damage in most cases. Once the tarantula lies paralyzed in the dirt, the wasp's task shifts from combat to logistics, and what follows is just as remarkable as the sting itself. The female tarantula hawk must now transport her incapacitated victim, a spider that can weigh several times her own body weight, back to a suitable location for the next stage of her plan. In many cases, she will drag the paralyzed tarantula across the ground toward an existing burrow, either the spider's own home or a hole she has prepared in advance, hauling the limp body by its legs across meters of rough, sun-baked terrain. This dragging process can take considerable time and energy, and it is not without risk, since a helpless tarantula sitting in the open is vulnerable to scavengers, other predators, or simply the punishing desert heat. Some tarantula hawk species have been observed digging their own burrow next to the paralyzed spider instead, excavating a fresh chamber specifically sized to the victim before sealing it inside. A behavior that demonstrates a surprising level of behavioral flexibility depending on the terrain and the situation the wasp finds herself in. Once the tarantula has been positioned inside the burrow, the wasp performs the final and most consequential act of the entire hunt. She lays a single egg directly onto the spider's abdomen, attaching it firmly with a specialized secretion so that it cannot easily be dislodged, and then she seals the burrow entrance behind her, leaving the paralyzed spider alone in the dark with the one thing that will determine its fate. This is where the true horror of this relationship truly begins, because the tarantula does not die. It remains alive, paralyzed but biologically functioning, for what can be an extended period underground, its body serving as a fresh, living food source for the wasp larva that is about to hatch. Within a matter of days, the egg splits open and a small white larva emerges, immediately beginning to feed. And here, nature reveals one final layer of precision in this already astonishing sequence. The larva does not feed indiscriminately. It begins by consuming the non-essential tissues first, the fat reserves, and less critical organs, deliberately avoiding the tarantula's vital systems for as long as possible. This is not conscious strategy on the larva's part, but rather millions of years of evolutionary refinement, because a larva that killed its host too early would starve before completing its development. By feeding in this specific, almost surgical order, the larva keeps the spider alive and its tissues fresh for weeks, sometimes even longer, ensuring a continuous supply of nutrition throughout its entire growth cycle. Eventually, after consuming enough of the tarantula's body to reach full size, the larva spins a silken cocoon within the burrow and enters a period of pupation that can last through the winter months, emerging the following spring or summer as a fully formed adult tarantula hawk, ready to begin the cycle anew. By the time the larva completes its transformation, the spider that once towered over the wasp in size and strength has been entirely consumed, its long life brought to an end not by a swift kill, but by weeks of slow, deliberate predation from within. Despite its fearsome reputation, the tarantula hawk rarely causes humans any real harm, and the reasons why say a lot about how these insects actually behave. These wasps are not aggressive toward people by nature. Their entire hunting behavior, their venom, and their formidable stinger evolved specifically to target and subdue tarantulas, not to defend against or attack larger mammals unless directly provoked or physically threatened. Most recorded human stings occur when a person accidentally steps on a wasp, grabs one without realizing what it is, or corners one against their skin or clothing. Left alone, a tarantula hawk will typically ignore a passing human entirely, more interested in nectar sources or the scent of a nearby burrow than in anything a person might be doing nearby. This is a crucial piece of context for understanding these insects properly. The tarantula hawk is not a monster wandering the desert in search of victims. It is a specialist, its entire biology built around one task: hunting the largest spiders in its ecosystem. The tarantula, for its part, is far from defenseless against most threats, and its survival strategy explains why it has managed to persist as one of the longest-lived arthropods on the planet, despite being vulnerable to this one dedicated predator. Against nearly every other threat in its environment, from birds to coyotes to snakes, the tarantula's combination of urticating hairs, powerful fangs, and surprising speed over short distances makes it a formidable and often successful defender of its own life. Its slow metabolism and long lifespan mean that a single tarantula only needs to survive one successful encounter with a tarantula hawk in its entire multi-decade existence to reproduce successfully many times over. And in most tarantula populations, encounters with these wasps remain relatively rare events rather than a constant, ever-present danger. This context helps explain how both species have managed to coexist for millions of years without either one being wiped out. The wasp's hunting strategy is costly and time-consuming enough that it cannot decimate tarantula populations wholesale, while the tarantula's overall resilience and defensive toolkit ensure that most individuals live out the majority of their long lives without ever crossing paths with their most singular natural enemy. Unlike most nature documentary showdowns, there is no chase here and no dramatic sprint across open ground. The entire outcome hinges on one moment, the instant the stinger finds that narrow, unprotected joint. That single strike zone, paired with one paralyzing venom, has been enough to sustain dozens of Pepsi species across the Americas for millions of years. As summer arrives each year across the deserts of the American Southwest, this same drama repeats itself in burrows and open scrubland from Arizona to Texas, largely unseen by the people who pass through this landscape every day. The tarantula hawk and the tarantula remain locked in a relationship that is neither purely predator and prey, nor purely parasite and host, but something in between, refined by millions of years of evolution into one of the most unusual confrontations found anywhere in the insect world. If this deep dive into one of nature's most extreme predator-prey relationships fascinated you, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Wild Frontlines, and let us know in the comments which dessert showdown you want us to cover next.